A call for help. The bridge of the Earth Federation's 7th Fleet flagship, Resolute, hummed with quiet efficiency. Captain Tom West leaned back in his chair, savoring the last sips of his coffee. Midnight ship time was usually uneventful, the crew settling into the calm rhythms of space patrol. But tonight, the calm shattered like a glass pane under pressure. "Captain." Communications Officer Mike's voice cut through the stillness, sharp with urgency. "We're receiving an incoming signal, distress call. It's definitely not human." Tom straightened, his heavy boots thudding against the metal floor as he crossed to Mike's station. The gravity on the Resolute was set to Earth standard, a constant reminder of their origins as Deathworlders, a term the galaxy used to mock them but one they wore like a badge of honor. "Put it through," Tom ordered, setting his mug down. The bridge filled with an eerie, musical tone, like a desperate symphony played on alien instruments. Then, words, halting, broken English, emerged from the chaos of sound. "To any civilized species, this is the Bright Star Alliance. Our home system is under attack. The swarm comes. Please, we need help. Even primitive assistance will suffice." The transmission faltered, replaced by static. The words hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. "Deathworlders," muttered First Officer Linda Price, her brow furrowing. "They're talking about us." Tom's lips twitched into a faint smirk. "Run a full scan on the signal's origin," he commanded, his voice steady. The crew sprang into action, their hands dancing across holographic controls. A tactical map flickered onto the main display, revealing the Centauri 80047 system, a chaotic mess of energy signatures and debris. 2 days' jump from our position, reported the sensor officer. Massive energy spikes consistent with a large-scale space battle. "They're out of their league," Linda said, gesturing to the screen. "The swarm ships look organic, biological weapons, no doubt. And those crystalline vessels, that must be the Bright Star Alliance. Beautiful, but they're getting torn apart." Tom studied the display, his jaw tightening. Humanity had spent decades clawing its way to relevance among the stars. They'd been laughed at, dismissed as relics of a brutal world. And yet, here was a cry for help, directed at them. "Send a reply," Tom said, his voice firm. "Use all available frequencies." He stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back as he addressed the alien civilization. "Bright Star Alliance, this is Captain Tom West of the Earth Federation 7th Fleet. We've received your distress signal. Be advised, we are the so-called Deathworlders you've mentioned. Primitive as we may seem, we are capable and willing to assist. Transmit your tactical data immediately." The response was quick, tinged with both hope and skepticism. "Deathworlder Fleet, we are grateful for your offer. But please understand, our conflict involves technologies far beyond your capabilities. Your vessels, composed of physical matter, would stand no chance." Linda snorted softly, leaning toward Tom. "Physical matter, huh? Guess they've never seen a tungsten rod moving at near light speed." Tom ignored her comment, addressing the Bright Star Alliance again. "With respect, we've reviewed your tactical situation. The 7th Fleet has extensive combat experience. Our primitive technology has its advantages. Transmit your data, and we'll demonstrate." A long silence followed, broken only by the low hum of the Resolute's engines. Then, finally, data transmitting. "We appreciate any help, even from Deathworlders." "Sound General Quarters," Tom ordered, his voice cutting through the tension. "All hands to battle stations. Prepare for immediate jump to Centauri 80047. The bridge erupted into activity, alarms blaring as the crew moved with precision. Tom felt the familiar pulse of adrenaline as the fleet's engines began powering up, their low rumble vibrating through the ship. Linda glanced at him, her expression a mix of excitement and determination. They think we're primitives. Guess we'll have to show them what primitives can do. Tom picked up his empty coffee mug, a grin breaking through his usually stoic demeanor. Let's remind the galaxy why Earth's gravity and harsh conditions made us the best damn fighters out here. The countdown to the jump began, the fleet of 30 ships aligning in perfect formation. As the final seconds ticked away, Tom stared at the tactical display, his resolve hardening. Bright Star Alliance, he muttered to himself, you've called on Deathworlders. Let's hope you're ready for what that really means. The stars stretched and blurred as the fleet entered hyperspace, hurtling toward a battle that would prove to the galaxy, once and for all, that humanity wasn't just a species of survivors. They were warriors. The Resolute and the Seventh Fleet emerged from hyperspace with pinpoint precision, the vast expanse of the Centauri 80047 system stretching out before them. 3 blazing suns bathed the scene in harsh light, illuminating a battlefield that would have stunned even the most hardened veterans. Holy hell, muttered Linda, eyes fixed on the main screen. The Bright Star Alliance's crystalline ships, their surfaces shimmering like captured starlight, were locked in a desperate struggle. Their energy beams streaked across space, beautiful but tragically ineffective. Surrounding them, the Swarm, a nightmarish fleet of organic vessels, pressed forward, their insect-like forms pulsating with grotesque life. The contrast between the ethereal beauty of the Bright Star ships and the Swarm's grotesque ferocity was stark and chilling. Status report, Tom barked, his voice sharp as steel. 57 enemy vessels, replied the sensor officer. 12 Bright Star ships still intact, concentrated around that crystalline station. It looks like their last line of defense. And us? Tom asked. All ships accounted for, sir, Linda said. No sign we've been noticed yet. Tom nodded. That wouldn't last long. Let's make an entrance. Open a channel to the Bright Star Alliance. Moments later, the melodic alien voice filled the bridge, this time tinged with disbelief. Deathworlder fleet, your vessels, they are made of dead matter. How do you even travel through space in such primitive containers? Tom smirked. These primitive containers are about to save your lives. Stand by and watch. Are they serious? Linda whispered, her tone dripping with amusement. They'll learn, Tom replied. All ships, assume battle formation Delta. Load kinetic rounds and prepare to engage. I want every turret locked and ready. The Seventh Fleet sprang into action, moving with a precision that belied their seemingly archaic technology. The human ships formed a wide arc, positioning themselves to flank the swarm. The enemy began to notice, shifting their grotesque vessels toward the newcomers. They're ignoring the Bright Star ships now, Linda reported. Looks like we've got their attention. Good, Tom said, leaning forward. Let's show them what we can do. All ships, fire on my mark. The swarm surged forward, their movements erratic and almost organic, as though driven by some primal instinct. They seemed to underestimate the human ships, expecting energy weapons that would bounce harmlessly off their biological hulls. Mark. The Seventh Fleet unleashed its fury. Hundreds of tungsten rods, propelled at near-light speed, tore through space. The kinetic rounds smashed into the swarm vessels with devastating force, punching through their armor like paper. 5 swarm ships disintegrated instantly, their organic fragments scattering into the void. The Bright Star's voice returned, now laced with stunned amazement. Impossible. You are damaging them, with physical projectiles? Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution, Tom replied. All ships, continue firing. Target their engines and weapon clusters. The battle became a chaotic ballet. The swarm twisted and adapted, their forms shifting grotesquely as they tried to counter the humans' relentless assault. But the Seventh Fleet was relentless. When one tactic began to lose effectiveness, they switched seamlessly to another. Explosive rounds replaced kinetic slugs, detonating inside the swarm ships and sending shockwaves through their organic interiors. "Sir," Linda called out, "the swarm is trying to regroup. They're forming a defensive cluster." "Let them," Tom said. "They'll only make themselves an easier target. Have the fleet adjust formation. I want overlapping fields of fire. And someone send a data burst to the Bright Star Alliance. Let them know it's their turn to take a few shots while we keep the swarm busy." The Bright Star's response was hesitant. "Your tactics are unorthodox, but effective. We will coordinate." As the humans and Bright Star forces began working in tandem, the tide of battle shifted. The crystalline ships, once on the verge of annihilation, now took advantage of the swarm's distraction to strike more effectively. Their energy weapons, though less devastating than human firepower, added a layer of chaos that further disoriented the enemy. "Another volley, Captain?" Linda asked. Tom nodded. "Keep the pressure on. Let's make sure they know Earth doesn't do halfway measures." Another barrage of explosive rounds hammered the swarm fleet, and more of their ships erupted in fiery destruction. The Bright Star Station, once surrounded and outnumbered, now stood as a beacon of defiance in the chaos. "Swarm ships are retreating," the sensor officer called out. "They're jumping to hyperspace." Tom exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. "Status of the fleet?" "Minimal damage," Linda replied. "A few minor hull breaches, nothing we can't handle. And the Bright Star ships are still intact." The melodic voice of the Bright Star Alliance returned, this time rich with gratitude. "Deathworlder fleet, we owe you our survival. Your methods, they defy logic, yet they have proven astonishingly effective. Would you dock at our station? We have much to discuss." Tom smiled. "Glad to help. And yes, we'd be happy to dock. But fair warning, we'll need gravity and breathable air. Us Deathworlders have a few, unique requirements." "We will accommodate," the Bright Star replied, their tone shifting to one of genuine curiosity. "Your species is unlike anything we have encountered. We wish to learn more." As the human ships moved toward the crystalline station, Tom leaned back in his chair, his grin widening. "Prepare for dock, and make sure engineering packs some tools," he told Linda. "I have a feeling we're about to teach our new friends a thing or two about primitive technology." The Seventh Fleet's victory had proven humanity's worth, but Tom knew this was only the beginning. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, challenges would come, and humans would meet them head-on, as they always had. Humanity's strengths revealed. The docking procedure was smooth, but as the Resolute connected with the crystalline Bright Star Station, the contrast between human and alien technology was striking. The station gleamed like a diamond, its surfaces pulsating with energy that seemed alive. The humans, with their angular ships of metal and composites, looked almost primitive by comparison. And yet, it was the humans who had turned the tide of battle. Captain Tom West stepped onto the docking ramp, his boots clanging against the polished floor. Beside him walked First Officer Linda Price, her datapad in hand, along with a contingent of 20 Marines clad in sleek combat suits. The Bright Star Alliance had insisted that the meeting chamber would be adjusted to Earth-normal conditions, an atmosphere and gravity their delicate physiology found extreme. As the airlock opened, they were greeted by an alien figure who seemed to shimmer in the light. Tall and ethereal, with skin that glowed faintly like mother of pearl, the Bright Star representative projected an air of grace. Its voice wasn't spoken but flowed directly into their minds, melodic and curious. "Deathworlders," it began, its tone both awed and hesitant, "we welcome you to our station. We are eager to understand how your species functions in such harsh conditions. And more importantly, how you wield such destructive efficiency with what we consider primitive tools." Tom chuckled. "You'll find we're full of surprises. A clash of cultures. The meeting chamber was filled with Bright Star civilians, their glowing forms huddled together as they observed the humans. Many of the aliens had dimmed their natural luminescence, a clear sign of their unease. For the Bright Star, the humans must have appeared as lumbering, armored giants, their combat suits built for survival in hostile environments. The Bright Star representative led the humans to a central table made of transparent crystal, its surface rippling with soft waves of light. Tom, unfazed by the alien display, leaned forward and placed a small metallic device on the table, a holographic projector. A tactical display of the recent battle appeared, human technology overlaying the advanced alien interface. "This," Tom said, pointing at the screen, "is how we turned the tide. Kinetic weapons, explosive rounds, and coordinated tactics. Simple, maybe, but effective." The Bright Star representative studied the projection, its luminescent eyes flickering. "You are a paradox. Your technology is ancient by our standards, yet your adaptability is unmatched. We have spent millennia refining energy-based weapons, only to find them useless against the swarm's biological constructs. You, however, found a solution in minutes." Linda chimed in, her tone matter-of-fact. "Adapt or die. That's the Deathworlder way. Earth's a tough place to live, high gravity, unpredictable weather, predators everywhere. Our survival meant figuring out how to overcome challenges fast." The Bright Star alien tilted its head, intrigued. "Your resilience is remarkable. Our kind evolved in peace, in environments of harmony. Conflict was rare. Your world must be unforgiving." Tom nodded. "It is. But it made us who we are." As the humans and Bright Star representatives exchanged knowledge, an alarm sounded, its pitch high and urgent. The Bright Star representative's glow brightened with fear. "The swarm has regrouped," it said, its voice now sharp and anxious. "They are adapting to your tactics." On the tactical display, new swarm ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. These vessels were different, their organic forms now covered in spiny, chitinous armor designed to absorb and deflect kinetic impacts. The swarm had learned quickly. "Looks like they're not wasting time," Linda remarked grimly. Tom's jaw tightened. "And neither will we. Relay this to the fleet, prepare for engagement. Adjust to armor-piercing rounds and set up a defensive perimeter around the station." The Bright Star representative hesitated. "You would fight again so soon? Your forces must be depleted." Tom turned to face the alien, his expression resolute. "We don't back down. If the swarm thinks we're done, they've got another thing coming. The next battle begins." The 7th Fleet moved into position with practiced precision, forming a protective barrier around the Bright Star station. This time, they knew the swarm would be ready for kinetic rounds, so the humans adapted again. Weapons were calibrated for explosive rounds designed to penetrate the swarm's new armor and detonate from within. On the Bright Star station, the aliens watched in awe as human crews worked with remarkable speed and coordination. Engineers bolted down makeshift barricades, technicians adjusted targeting systems, and Marines readied for the possibility of boarding actions. Despite their advanced technology, the Bright Star had never witnessed such raw determination. "Why do you fight with such ferocity?" the Bright Star representative asked Tom, who stood at the center of the command room, issuing orders. Tom glanced at the alien, his voice calm but firm. "Because that's what we do. When someone calls for help, we answer. And we don't stop until the job's done." The swarm fleet closed in, their spiny vessels radiating menace. The first volley came, a barrage of organic projectiles that slammed against the human ship's shields. The Resolute shook under the impact, but Tom's crew remained steadfast. "All ships, return fire," Tom commanded. The 7th Fleet unleashed another devastating barrage. Explosive rounds tore into the swarm's new armor, breaching it with precision. The space around the Bright Star station lit up with fiery detonations as the swarm's ships were systematically dismantled.
The Bright Star representatives, watching the battle unfold, began to see humanity in a new light. They weren't just warriors, they were survivors, innovators, and protectors. The Deathworlder's methods might have been brutal, but they were born from necessity, honed by a world that demanded nothing less than excellence to endure. As the swarm retreated once again, their numbers decimated, the Bright Star representative turned to Tom. "You are unlike any species we have encountered. Your ability to adapt is inspiring. Perhaps there is strength in what we once dismissed as primitive." Tom smiled faintly. "We're just getting started. Stick with us, and you'll see what humanity's really capable of." With the swarm pushed back for the second time, the stage was set for deeper cooperation between the two species. Humanity had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, Deathworlders didn't just survive, they thrived. The tension aboard the Resolute was palpable as the 7th Fleet regrouped. The swarm had retreated for now, but Captain Tom West knew better than to believe they'd given up. They weren't just predators, they were relentless, evolving with every encounter. If they came back, they'd be more dangerous than ever. "Status report," Tom called out, his voice steady but firm. Linda Price, standing at her tactical station, replied, "Fleet integrity at 92%. Minor hull damage on 3 ships, no major losses. Ammunition supplies are holding, but another prolonged fight could push us to the edge." Tom nodded, his mind already racing. "And the Bright Star station?" "Fully operational, thanks to our intervention. Their people are rattled but safe. They've never seen warfare like this." Tom glanced at the main display, where the crystalline station glimmered like a fragile jewel against the backdrop of space. It was a stark reminder of why they were here. Humanity didn't fight for glory or conquest, they fought because someone needed them. The swarm returns. The moment of calm didn't last long. Alarms blared across the bridge, and the sensor officer shouted, "Incoming." Multiple swarm vessels dropping out of hyperspace, far side of the system. Numbers, 60+, with new configurations. Tom's jaw tightened. "Let's see them." The main screen shifted to show the new swarm fleet. These ships were larger, their organic hulls now plated with dark, segmented armor that pulsed faintly with life. Their forms writhed as if alive, and strange tendrils extended from their surfaces, crackling with energy. "They've adapted again," Linda said grimly. "That armor looks like it's designed to neutralize explosive rounds. And those tendrils could be energy disruptors." Tom's eyes narrowed. "They're learning faster than expected. We'll have to hit them with something they can't predict." "Ideas?" "Humanity's ingenuity." A quiet voice spoke up from the engineering station. It was Lieutenant Carlos Vega, a young but brilliant officer known for his unconventional thinking. "Captain, what if we exploit their biology directly? Their ships are organic, right? That means they likely have weaknesses to things like heat, pressure, or even chemical reactions." Tom turned to him, intrigued. "Go on." "We could deploy thermal warheads," Carlos explained. "Instead of direct impacts, they'd release intense heat and concussive force. Organic structures can only handle so much before they start to break down." Linda raised an eyebrow. "We'd have to rig those on the fly. Can we pull it off?" Tom's lips curled into a smirk. "We're Deathworlders. If we can't improvise, who can? Get on it, Carlos. You've got 30 minutes. Preparing for battle." The crew moved with practiced urgency, their hands flying over controls as they reconfigured the fleet's armaments. Engineers in the ship's depths worked tirelessly, repurposing standard torpedoes into makeshift thermal warheads. It was a gamble, but in Tom's experience, the best strategies often were. Meanwhile, the Bright Star representative reached out, its voice resonating with curiosity and concern. Deathworlder fleet, your actions are bold, but are you certain these modifications will work? The swarm adapts rapidly. Tom replied with calm confidence. That's why we don't just adapt, we innovate. The swarm expects us to play their game. We're about to change the rules. The bright star hesitated, then said, your resolve is admirable. We will provide what support we can. The counterattack begins. The swarm moved quickly, their ship spreading out to encircle the human fleet and the bright star station. Tendrils crackled with energy, and the first wave of organic projectiles streaked toward the humans. The Resolute shook under the impact, but its shields held. All ships, maintain formation, Tom commanded. Hold fire until the thermal warheads are ready. Let them think we're out of ideas. The swarm pressed closer, their vessels weaving through the void with an almost predatory grace. On the bridge of the Resolute, tension hung thick in the air. Thermal warheads are loaded, Carlos reported at last. All systems green. Tom's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. All ships, fire on my mark. Target their center cluster, let's see how they like the heat. Mark. The 7th Fleet unleashed its new weaponry. The thermal warheads streaked through space, glowing brightly as they closed in on the swarm's fleet. When they detonated, the results were immediate and devastating. Waves of searing heat and concussive force rippled through the swarm ships, melting armor and rupturing organic hulls. The once menacing fleet faltered, their tendrils curling inward as they succumbed to the unrelenting assault. Cheers erupted across the Resolute's bridge, but Tom remained focused. Don't let up. Keep the pressure on. Target their engines and weapon systems. The human fleet moved with brutal efficiency, capitalizing on the swarm's confusion. Ship after ship was destroyed, their remains drifting lifelessly into the void. Humanity's resolve. As the battle raged, the Bright Star Alliance watched in awe. The Deathworlders, with their seemingly crude technology, had once again outsmarted a foe that had brought their own civilization to the brink of extinction. The Bright Star representative's voice returned, now tinged with newfound respect. Your methods are extraordinary. We are beginning to understand why your kind thrives in environments we would consider impossible. Tom glanced at the tactical display, where the remnants of the swarm fleet were retreating into hyperspace. It's not just about surviving, he said. It's about making sure no one gets left behind. That's what we fight for. With the swarm beaten back once more, the 7th Fleet prepared for what came next. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But humanity had proven once again that no matter the odds, no matter the enemy, they would always rise to the challenge. And for the first time, the Bright Star Alliance began to see the Deathworlders not as primitives, but as allies, and perhaps, as something far more. A fragile alliance. The swarm had been driven off once more, their retreat leaving the void littered with debris and the faint glow of cooling wreckage. Yet aboard the Resolute, the mood was far from celebratory. Captain Tom West stood at the bridge's central console, staring at the tactical display. He knew the swarm wouldn't remain on the back foot for long. This was merely a reprieve, a chance to prepare for what would inevitably come next. The Bright Star Alliance, too, was beginning to recover from the shock of the recent battle. Their representatives, now more willing to engage in dialogue, had extended an invitation to humanity to discuss deeper cooperation. Tom accepted without hesitation, though he knew trust would be slow to build. The Bright Star aliens were elegant, advanced, and cautious, while humanity was rugged, scrappy, and direct. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, and those differences would soon collide. On board the crystalline station, Tom and his team were ushered into a vast chamber of shimmering light. The Bright Star representatives floated gracefully across the floor, their forms glowing softly with shifting hues that reflected their emotions, curiosity, unease, and perhaps a hint of admiration. The humans, clad in their practical combat suits, were a stark contrast, their presence almost overwhelming in the alien hull. The meeting began with cautious exchanges. The Bright Star spoke of their centuries-long battle with the Swarm, their once great fleets now reduced to fragile remnants. They explained their reliance on energy-based technology, their belief that physical matter was obsolete. Tom listened intently, offering little as he let the aliens voice their doubts about humanity's methods. Finally, one of the Bright Star representatives, its glow dimmed with apprehension, addressed Tom directly. "Your strategies are effective, but they are born of a harshness we cannot comprehend. How does a species thrive in such constant adversity?" Tom considered the question, glancing at his team before responding. "Adversity doesn't give us a choice. We survive because we have to. And in the process, we've learned to adapt, to innovate, to fight for each other. The conditions on Earth aren't forgiving. If we weren't tough, we wouldn't have made it this far." The Bright Star representative tilted its head, its light shifting to a contemplative blue. "It is a strength we lack. We evolved in harmony, in stability. Conflict was rare, and survival never a question. Perhaps that is why we struggle against the Swarm, they are a force we cannot fathom." Tom leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Then let us help you. Together, we can stand against them. But it's going to require trust, and that starts here." The Bright Star aliens exchanged subtle glances, their light flickering in unspoken conversation. At last, their leader turned back to Tom. "We will work with you, Deathworlder. But there is much we must learn about your ways, and you, ours." As the meeting concluded, Tom felt a flicker of hope. The alliance was fragile, but it was a start. Yet, even as they began to discuss joint tactics and technology exchanges, reports arrived from the Resolute. A Swarm probe had been detected at the edge of the system. The enemy was watching, waiting, adapting once again. Back aboard the Resolute, Tom gathered his senior officers. Linda was already at her station, her usual calm replaced with a restless energy. "The Swarm's not done with us, Captain. That probe's a scout. They'll be back, and we can bet they'll have another trick up their sleeve." Tom nodded. "Then we'll need to stay one step ahead. What's our status?" "Ammunition supplies are tight, and the fleet's showing wear," Linda admitted. "But morale's high. The crew's ready for whatever comes next." Tom looked around the room, his gaze settling on each officer. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. The Bright Star are counting on us, and they're not built for this kind of fight. It's on us to hold the line." The officers nodded in agreement, determination etched into their faces. Despite their doubts, despite the odds, humanity would stand firm. The Swarm could adapt all they wanted, but so could the Deathworlders. If the enemy thought they'd seen the extent of Earth's ingenuity, they were sorely mistaken. As the fleet prepared for the next encounter, Tom found himself staring out at the stars. Humanity's place in the galaxy was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were no longer alone. Allies had been found, and a bond was beginning to form. It wouldn't be easy, and the cost would be high. But humanity had always thrived in the face of adversity, and this time would be no different. When the Swarm returned, they wouldn't just be facing a fleet of scrappy Deathworlders. They'd be facing a united force, one that combined human grit with alien ingenuity. It was a combination the galaxy had never seen before, and one that would soon prove unstoppable. The final stand. The Swarm returned sooner than anyone expected. Their fleet tore into the system like a storm, an overwhelming wave of grotesque organic ships, each one larger and more menacing than before. This time, their adaptations were clear: denser armor, spiked appendages designed to ram through shields, and massive organic cannons capable of firing corrosive payloads. The sheer size of the Swarm's fleet dwarfed anything the 7th Fleet and the Bright Star Alliance had faced before. Aboard the Resolute, the bridge buzzed with activity as alarms blared and status reports flooded in. Captain Tom West stood at the center, calm but resolute, his eyes locked on the tactical display. The swarm had learned from their previous defeats, and this time, they were determined to crush any resistance. "They're targeting the Bright Star Station directly," Linda Price reported. "If they breach it, the civilians on board won't stand a chance." Tom's jaw tightened. "We can't let that happen. All ships, assume defensive positions around the station. Prioritize intercepting any ships that get through." The 7th Fleet moved into action, their battered but resilient ships forming a protective barrier around the crystalline station. The Bright Star vessels, though fragile, joined the humans in the defensive effort, their energy beams slicing through the darkness to strike at the oncoming swarm. The swarm's first wave hit hard. Their ramming ships slammed into the human shields, their acidic projectiles eating away at the protective barriers. The Resolute shook violently as a blast struck its side, but the crew held their ground, firing back with precision. "Captain," Linda called out, "their new armor is absorbing most of our firepower. We're not doing enough damage." Tom clenched his fists. The swarm had adapted faster than anyone had anticipated, and their sheer numbers were overwhelming. But giving up wasn't an option. He turned to Lieutenant Carlos Vega, the fleet's resident innovator. "Carlos, tell me you've got something." Carlos looked up from his console, his face determined. "We've been working on a new weapon, something experimental. It's a concentrated electromagnetic pulse designed to overload their organic systems. It'll short out their ships for a few minutes, maybe longer." "Side effects?" Tom asked. Carlos hesitated. "It's untested at this scale. It could disable our systems too." Tom didn't hesitate. "Do it. We don't have a choice." As Carlos relayed orders to his engineering teams, Tom addressed the fleet. "All ships, prepare for an EMP blast. Shut down non-essential systems and brace for impact." The fleet scrambled to comply as the swarm pressed their attack. The Resolute's shields flickered under the onslaught, and the Bright Star Station trembled as its own defenses buckled. The EMP weapon was their last hope. "EMP charged and ready," Carlos reported. "On your command, Captain." Tom took a deep breath, his voice steady as he gave the order. "Fire." The pulse rippled out from the Resolute, a shockwave of invisible energy that surged through the battlefield. The effect was immediate. Swarm ships shuddered to a halt, their organic systems sparking and failing. Tendrils drooped, and their acidic projectiles ceased. Even their massive cannons fell silent. The human fleet wasn't spared. Consoles dimmed, lights flickered, and engines stuttered. But the Bright Star ships, unaffected by the electromagnetic attack, surged forward. Their energy beams sliced through the now vulnerable swarm ships, destroying dozens in mere moments. "Bright Star Alliance," Tom said, his voice cutting through the comms. "This is your chance. Finish them." The Bright Star vessels moved with a precision and ferocity that belied their previous hesitance. They struck with coordinated precision, dismantling the swarm fleet one ship at a time. The humans, as their systems rebooted, rejoined the fight, their kinetic weapons picking off the remaining enemies. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but finally, the swarm began to retreat. Their numbers had been decimated, their once mighty fleet reduced to scattered remnants fleeing into hyperspace. The void fell silent, the only remnants of the battle the drifting debris and the faint glow of the Bright Star Station. On the bridge of the Resolute, the crew erupted into cheers. Tom allowed himself a rare smile, but his mind remained focused. The swarm had been beaten, but at great cost. Ships were damaged, and lives had been lost. Yet they had won. Humanity and the Bright Star Alliance had stood together and prevailed. "Damage report," Tom ordered. Linda scanned her console. "Fleet's holding together, but we've taken heavy hits. No total losses. The Bright Star Station is intact." "And the swarm?" Tom asked. Gone, Linda replied. For now. Tom nodded. We'll need to be ready if they come back. But for now, we've earned this victory. As the fleet began recovery efforts, a transmission came from the Bright Star Alliance. Their leader's voice resonated with gratitude and respect. Deathworlder fleet, you have saved us. Your ingenuity, your resilience, it has given us hope where there was none. We are honored to call you allies. Tom's smile widened slightly. Glad we could help. But this is just the beginning. If the swarm returns, we'll be ready, and so will you. The humans and the Bright Star Alliance had forged a bond in the crucible of battle. Together, they had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, unity and ingenuity could prevail. And for the first time, the galaxy began to see the Deathworlders not as primitives, but as a force to be reckoned with. Aftermath and reflection. The battlefield was quiet now, the remnants of the swarm drifting aimlessly in the cold vacuum of space. For the first time in weeks, the crew of the Resolute could breathe a sigh of relief. Victory had been hard-earned, and the price had been steep, but the swarm was gone, at least for now. Captain Tom West stood on the bridge, gazing at the tactical display. The Bright Star Station glimmered faintly in the distance, its crystalline structure a beacon of survival amidst the wreckage. Around it, the battered ships of the 7th Fleet hovered, their hulls scarred but intact. Status? Tom asked, breaking the silence. First Officer Linda Price glanced at her console, her voice weary but steady. Fleet's holding together. Repairs are underway on all ships. We've sustained losses, but considering what we were up against, it could have been much worse. And the Bright Star Alliance? Tom asked. They're stabilizing, Linda said. The station's systems are operational, and their people are safe. They've already sent their gratitude, Captain. Tom nodded. Gratitude was good, but it wasn't enough. The swarm had been defeated here, but the galaxy was vast, and this was only one battle in a war that would likely span years. The Bright Star Alliance would need more than hope, they'd need strength, resilience, and the will to fight. A transmission came through from the Bright Star Station, and the melodic voice of their leader filled the bridge. Captain West, we cannot express the depth of our gratitude. Your fleet has saved our people, our civilization. We never imagined such a partnership could exist. Tom stepped forward, his tone firm but warm. We're glad we could help, but this partnership is just beginning. The swarm will return, they always adapt, always come back stronger. If we're going to survive, we'll need to be ready. Together. The Bright Star leader's voice softened with a mix of humility and determination. You are right. We have seen what your species is capable of, your adaptability, your ingenuity, your courage. These are traits we must learn if we are to endure. Tom exchanged a glance with Linda, who gave a slight nod. We'll teach you, Tom said. We'll show you what it means to fight like Deathworlders. But it's not just about the weapons or the tactics. It's about the mindset. On Earth, we learned that survival isn't just a struggle, it's a purpose. And when we fight for more than ourselves. We fight for each other. There was a pause before the Bright Star leader responded. We will learn, Captain. And we will stand with you when the swarm returns. As the transmission ended, Tom turned to his crew. All right, people. We've earned a rest, but there's work to be done. Repairs, resupply, and coordination with the Bright Star. Let's make sure the next time the swarm shows up, we're ready to hit them harder. The crew sprang into action, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten as they began preparing for what came next. Tom watched them for a moment, pride swelling in his chest. They were Deathworlders, every one of them, a species forged by adversity, united by a fierce determination to survive and protect. Later, as the fleet settled into a temporary calm, Tom stood in his quarters, staring out at the stars. The swarm was a terrifying force, but humanity had proven that terror wasn't enough to break them. They had risen to the challenge, not just for themselves but for an entire civilization that had once looked down on them as primitives. The Bright Star Alliance had learned what it meant to fight alongside Deathworlders, and Tom was confident that this was only the beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger for their shared experience and their newfound bond. Tom's gaze hardened as he turned back to his desk. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humanity had always thrived in the face of the impossible. And now, they weren't just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for something far greater. "Let them come," Tom muttered under his breath. "We'll be ready." As the Resolute and the Seventh Fleet floated amidst the stars, a fragile alliance had been born, one that carried the promise of survival, unity, and a future shaped not by fear, but by hope.